Alright guys, we are back for part 4. I want to show you guys how I got the drive shaft and the drivetrain to work properly. So I wanted to show you what the stock one looked like. So on these Dodges, the rear end is hooked up on this side, and then it runs to your center bearing right here, and oops, and then you have this front drive shaft right here that runs from the center bearing to the back of your transmission. Well, these drive shafts are two-piece drive shafts. So you can separate them here in the middle. They just slide out. And I needed it to work with my 4L60, which is a slip yoke transmission. So I had to cut the front end off of this and weld in, it's called a weld-in yoke. I think it was like 3.25 inches in diameter. It was kind of hard to find, but I wound up finding a vendor that offered it. I think it was like $50 for it. Mind you, this is just a temporary drive shaft just to get me running and driving for now. But I would like to get a actual drive shaft from a shop. That's balanced and don't have to worry about it breaking or anything like that, because if this breaks at 100 plus miles an hour, that it can cause serious damage, to your legs and stuff like that. So you want to be very careful with this, and I recommend getting an actual drive shaft. But for those that just need to, just get it, just driving around the corner or something like that, this is what I did. And so I cut off the front here, put in a weld-in yoke, and then I put in a universal joint and then a slip yoke. So I'll show you here what it looks like. So this is what the front drive shaft looks like. You cut off right here, cut off what you need. That's what it looks like, and then that's the weld-in yoke right there. So you just put that in there, tap it in like that. So that's what it used to be, and this is what it is now. So you put in a yoke, or the weld-in yoke, a universal joint, and then a slip yoke. So I had a machine shop guy weld it up for me. He TIG welded it. He made it look real nice, really strong too. So he did a really good job on this. And then this is what it looks like, and this is what it looks like at the end. So this is the universal joint here. I greased it all up. I think it's a Spicer 1310 universal joint. With a slip yoke that fits the 4L60 transmissions. Make sure you get the right spline number. I think this is a 27 or a 28 spline transmission. I think. Make sure you do your research before you purchase it, but make sure you get the right one and the right length as well. And yeah, so that's what it looks like. So basically, here is what it looks like in the end and just sitting out of the car. So this goes into the rear end. You got your center bearing here, and then got your slip yoke here at the end as well. So technically, this front drive shaft actually can slip front and backwards like this in the transmission. But I think it'll be fine. I don't think I have run into any issues. Transmission, I didn't really take any pictures for this. This is for the shifter. So I wound up actually using the little shift linkage, whatever it holds it in place. I used the stock one off the Chevy, and I just cut it up and I bent it to what I needed. And I wound up running a nut and bolt through this hole and hooked it up to an ear. There's like an ear on the transmission. I don't have a picture anywhere about this, unfortunately, but yeah, so I have it hooked up to like the ear of the transmission, and the shift cable just goes into here and then hooks up to the transmission. And it took a little bit of trial and error of bending it and trying to get it right, because I couldn't get it into gear properly, but then enough tweaking and enough welding, I wound up getting it to shift in all the gears perfectly fine, and no problems with it. So this is what it looks like. I painted it black to keep it from rusting. I'm worried about it. Kind of looks really flimsy, but it hasn't bent on me. It seems pretty strong, at least for what I need for now. Yeah. And then here's a video of it running. I put it in gear. Because these cars are open diff differential, only one side spins. Yeah, so what it does, how open differentials work is the power just goes to one side that has the least traction. They kind of suck for that, but that's what these cars have. You can upgrade them to a limited slip differential that winds up locking the axles when there's low traction. But so yeah, so that was the first time of it actually turning and actually driving. So that was a big milestone in this project. The next thing is the pedal with the throttle cable. I did not want to use the Chevy pedal. I like to look at the Dodge pedal, and also because it bolts into the car properly. So if I can, I wanted to try to get it to mount the make this work with the Chevy. So what I did is on these cars they're drive-by cable or drive-by-wire, I'm sorry, and on the Chevys they're drive-by-cable. So what I need to do is I put a couple of holes in here, and I'll show you what I did about that. So with these holes in here, I popped off this cover on the side of here. I actually went up breaking it off, but it's no big deal. It'll stay in place. So I pop off this cover, and there's two springs in here. I didn't want to have too much spring load on the pedal because there's already a spring on the throttle body as well. So I didn't want to have like it to require a lot of force just to push the gas pedal. So I took one of the springs out of here. And then I drilled this out a little bit in the center here, and you'll see I actually used a Chevy pedal to work in here. I went up going to the Driveshaft, or not a Driveshaft, the junkyard, and borrowing I bought a pedal there, which I used to mount onto his. So what I did is I mounted 2 screws to the Chevy pedal, and it winds up pivoting right here. See this little stud right here? So it actually pivots right there in the Chevys. So what I did is just shave down the one end, and that is what pivots inside this little circle right here. And these 2 holes go into these right here. You tighten them down. So this is what the Chevy looks like. I cut the pedal off right here. The pedal would be on the other end of this, but I went up cutting it off because I didn't need it. And this is what it looks like. I went up bending it a lot to bend it out of the way from the steering column and other lines that are underneath the dash as well. But there's enough throw on it. I think you need at least like 2 inches of a throw. When you push the pedal down, it needs to move back at least like 2 inches or so to pull the throttle body completely open. Otherwise, you're just sucking out horsepower because you're not using full throttle. So this is what it looks like when it's finished up. Push the pedal down, and then it moves that whole mechanism. And it actually surprisingly worked great. Yeah. So this is what it looked like. This is an old brake cable setup. You can see that oil line underneath there was sticking out. So just to go back on this, right here, you see that oil line sticking out way out the bottom here. I went up fixing this, like I said before in the other video. I went up tightening it up, tightening up the slack, as well as putting a different kind of fitting on it, which brought it up almost up to the subframe, so I don't have to worry about that dragging anymore. This is the old brake. Sorry about that. This is the old brake cable setup. Um, what I was using was a stock cable, and I had another stock cable laying around, and I literally just tied them together with a crimper, and that's what I used. But now I'm using a brake cable, or I'm sorry, a bicycle brake cable for bicycles. I think it was like $7 on Amazon, and you just cut them to length, and you can easily add on like whatever size you need. That works pretty good. So this is, like I said, this is what it looks like before hanging on the ground. So it's like almost dragging. So that is a big, big issue, but I want to fix that. So this is when I was trying to perfect the length of the throttle cable. So as you can see right there, that's full throttle. And I was trying to see if my pedal was truly going to full throttle when I was opening or pushing the pedal all the way down. And as you can see, it does not go full throttle. So you have to adjust the pedal a little bit and adjust the tightness of the cable to get what you need. And this was what it looked like underneath the dash. I went up soldering this. You can solder the brake cable with some solder, and then this has a little adjuster on here, so I can actually tighten it or loosen it if I wanted to. But yeah, that's what it looked like. And then I went up cutting this excess off, and then this just runs right through the firewall. I cut a hole through the firewall and drilled that out. So this is where we're at. So we got the throttle cable hooked up. We got all the hoses and wires and everything hooked up. Now it's just buttoning everything else up for driving it down the road. So yeah, got the cable hooked up over here. As you can see, it's just one single cable as opposed to two cables that was not working out at all. I didn't touch on this, but I wound up using I went to Pep Boys and I wound up getting a coolant hose line that was that fit the bends that I needed. I actually had to cut it down a little bit to get it to work, but it comes out of here, out the engine block, and it goes to the top of the radiator, which is like right around here. So yeah. And then I upgraded my hood prop to a piece of wood. I don't know why I was using a hood prop still when I had the front support bar back in. As you can see, the hood prop's right there. I don't know why I did that, but actually I can open the hood up a lot wider with using that. So yeah. Next was the exhaust. So my buddy, turns out a friend of his actually got a upgraded exhaust on his Charger like 10 years ago or something like that, and then he just like threw the old exhaust out into his yard. Well, we went up taking it out of the grass, and this is what it looked like. And after, I don't know, 8 to 10 years of it sitting, it is still in perfect condition. And this came off of a Dodge Charger as well, off of the 5.7 liter. And yeah, there's absolutely no rust or anything on this, and this probably saved me about like $200 just finding this in the yard. So this is what it looked like. I wound up hosing everything off. As you can see, the dirt is kind of still stuck on there, but I hosed everything out, and it's actually in really, really good condition. So I was mocking it up here. By the way, I went with this exhaust because it's a catback exhaust. So it ends like halfway up the car, and then you just build the rest. While the back half of this, everything bolts up to the car, like factory. So that's why I went this way. So yeah, this is what it looks like bolted up into the car. As you can see, it's like really flush, and everything just fits perfectly in here. That's why I went this way. It just saves you a lot of time. Goes into the hangers. Because this was a V6 car, it doesn't have the hangers on this side, so I had to buy a couple of hangers for this side. You can see the exhaust just ends down there. right by the end of the transmission. Like I said before in the first video, I had to drop the drive shaft down a little bit. I'll show you another picture in here in a few seconds, but this is what I did to drop down the drive shaft. So there was like a support brace right here that was just there in the car. I guess it's just in case, you know, anything would fall or anything like that. It doesn't dig into the ground, I guess. I don't know. But I went up putting a plate here and building these little brackets off of here, which the drive shaft bolts up to. The drive shaft right here bolts up to. Here's a better angle. So as you can see, the center bearing now sits down a lot lower. It sits about probably 2 inches lower than what it does in OEM. It actually would sit up here, but now it sits down here. And the drive shaft now sits straight, and everything spins pretty darn straight. That's what it looks like on this side. You can see the hole. The holes were actually messed up on this car. Someone was messing with it before and messed up all the holes. So I'm kind of glad that we're not using those holes again. And yeah, that's what it looks like underneath. And then I mocked up the exhaust. Like I said about the flanges, remember those flanges I was telling you about? Well, that's where it is right there. And then you weld the exhaust pipes. I wound up getting like this universal mandrel bend exhaust pipe from Amazon. This is mild steel. Doesn't look like it, but it is mild steel. And yeah, I think this exhaust pipe cost me like $150, and I have plenty left over. But I had to cut a couple of angles, you can see, and then just tack it all up. And once it's all tacked in, you just weld it all up. Another thing I noticed was that, so on this car, for some reason it only has an exhaust shield on this side of the tank and not on this side. So I wound up going to the junkyard and getting one off of like a Chrysler 300 and just put it in there. It didn't really fit up onto my tank properly, but I just bent it what I needed to do and got it sitting up there. Remember what happened to that fuel return line? Well, I fixed that. And it runs right here to the back of the tank. And yeah. So this is what it looks like all tacked up. These aren't the prettiest welds, but they work. They don't leak, and they hold. And that's all that matters. It's all welded up, and then these just slide into the old exhaust. I think this exhaust pipe is 2.5 inches. And they go into this catback exhaust, and you just clamp them down. And that's it. The transmission is the stock transmission. I went up just running 2 bolts on the bottom here to the transmission, and I am going to definitely 100% change this by summertime, because when I drove it, it was just absolutely loud because it's basically a solid mount as opposed to a rubber bushing in there, and it is obnoxiously loud going down the road. If you ask anyone that has solid transmission mounts, they change them back to rubber mounts after like 5 minutes of driving. But yeah, so I'm going to change the mounts out here. I'm not even going to use this piece anymore, but that's later down the road. Here's another angle. So this is what the car sounded like before. I just wanted to point out the difference with the exhaust. So this is just open exhaust headers, and this is how loud it is. And it went to sounding like this. So even with the mufflers that came from the factory, it's still extremely loud. Not extremely loud, it's actually pretty loud. When you're in the car, it's really not all that loud, honestly. It sounds pretty quiet on the inside of the cabin, surprisingly. But yeah, this car doesn't have catalytic converters. The ones on the car came, or the ones that were on this car already were too small, anyways, and I was planning on just taking this to the track only. But yeah, so the last thing is the electric fans. On the Chevys, they use mechanical fans, but on the Dodges they use electric fans. So there wasn't any there's no pinouts for fan control, but you can send it in to get reprogrammed. So when I actually sent my ECU out to get reprogrammed to get rid of my anti-theft system, the anti-theft system causes the car to only run for a second if you don't have the right key for it, which I don't. So uh, for the Chevy at least. So you have to get it reprogrammed to get rid of VATS, which is the anti-theft system. When they did that, they also reprogrammed it for fan controls as well as getting rid of the top speed governor on here. I think the speed governor is like set to like 98 miles an hour on these Tahoes. So I got rid of that. So now it has an unlimited speed limit. And I did this all going through lt1swap.com. They also do reprogramming. The guy there that works there is great. I think the turnaround time was like maybe 2 weeks or so. And it only cost me like $75 to send it out, and then he sends it back to within like 2 weeks or something like that. But yeah, and it works great. So after he reprogrammed it, so I had a pinout on my ECU to trigger a relay, and then that relay will tell my fans to turn on. So I have it wired, this red wire goes to my fans. So I just tapped into this wire right here, and it turns on the fans. I think I only have it wired on the low speed. I couldn't get the high speed to work properly because it needs two separate wires to be 12 volts at the same time. So that's something later on to work on, but for now, it just sits on low speed. It doesn't draw that much power anyways. But it still works pretty good to keep the car cool, at least in the winter time for now. But we'll have to see in the summertime. We might have to upgrade the fans and the radiator, but yeah. And the last thing I wanted to double check was, so you can balance your drive shafts by hand without sending it out to a shop. You can't balance them perfectly, but this helps you get a decent balance on them, I guess. So what you do is you put it up in the air, you put them down on jack stands, and you spin the car up to like 60 or 70 miles an hour, and you put a piece of, I don't think you can see it in the video, but there's a magnet that's hooked up to the differential, and I have a bottle of water sitting right here, and if you see the bottle of water splashing all over the place, then it's unbalanced and you need to add weights to it. There's plenty of videos online of people doing that like that, so you can go check that out. But this is what I did. So when I balanced it up, actually it was already pretty balanced. So yeah, as you can see, it was pretty balanced already. I didn't have to add any weights to it, so I think it should be. That was just kind of the test to make sure it would be okay to drive on the highway, because it's like it's a highway drive to get back to my house from my friend's shop. So I just wanted to make sure I was safe going down the road, at least for now, until I get an actual permanent drive shaft for it. But for now, it was just a temporary kind of measure to make sure everything was good. But I didn't have to add any weights to it. It seemed pretty balanced. And then the last thing was driving it home. So this is the video of me driving it home. As you saw from the dash, the only thing that works is the fuel level indicator, which was half a tank. speedometer doesn't work, tachometer doesn't work, and the temperature gauge does not work. So I basically, how I was seeing my speed and everything was using an OBD scanner, and I hooked it up to the OBD port on the Chevy side, and it tells you how fast you're going, what's your RPM, and all that kind of stuff, just by reading the system, because the transmission has an output speed sensor, so it knows how fast you're going. Um, so it's somewhat accurate. The only problem is it's not programmed for tire size and your rear gear ratio. I think these cars are a little bit taller of a gear because it was a 2.7 liter. But yeah. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. I hope this video helps you. It's not the best video in the world. It's just really a slideshow of just how I did it all, but I hope this helps you and gets you pointed in the right direction. So yeah, if you got any questions, just let me know.